Most people, or at least the few people that know us, think we made chocolate. And we do make lots of chocolate. I mean, we make about 20% of the chocolate in the world. But what people don't realize is that we make chocolate not only to make kids happy, but for a purpose. I mean, our main shareholder is a foundation, and this foundation is entirely focused on education and educational science. So to put it very simply, every time we make $1 of dividend, 50 cents out of the dollar goes back to education. And that is certain. And that is certainly this, and what we do in the field, in particular in Africa, to help the farmers, is certainly what gets us, all of us, out of the bed every morning. Sharing is good, but acting is better, and that we don't have time at all. You probably all know what happened in Nice on the 14th of July, where a madman was running over people with a truck. Well, I had a son in Nice. Luckily enough, he wasn't in the crowd. He was meant to be in the crowd, but there was an old lady that decided she was too tired to bring him down there. I cannot bless enough the old lady, I can tell you. I can tell you also that I didn't know the story of the old lady before the next day around noon, when my son woke up and decided finally to push the bloody button on Facebook. I'm safe. And sleep. So that personal proximity triggered a couple of thoughts. I mean, it made quite a personal impact, and it brought back a number of pictures. I mean, it brought back pictures from the past, pictures from the present, pictures that are far away in distance, and pictures that became really real. Pictures of books that are being burned because knowledge is a threat, then and now again. Pictures of cultures being erased, then and now again. Pictures of kids that are forbidden to go to school. Pictures of girls that are forbidden to school because they are girls, and we'll get back to that. Girls' education is absolutely fundamental. And pictures of teachers that are killed because they are teachers. It made those pictures incredibly concrete for one very simple reason. I mean, it made something very evident, which is everything that happened in Nice or in Paris or in Mumbai or in Istanbul or in Grand Bassam, or, I mean, you name it, and so many other things couldn't take place, wouldn't have taken place if every kid, and in particular every girl, was given access to quality education, access to knowledge, access to critical thinking, and access, obviously, to a hope for a better life. And by the way, that's not new news. We all know that forever. And despite the fact that everybody knows that forever, the thing doesn't change. Actually, it's going seriously in the wrong direction. So when you see that, and when you sort of wake up to that from something that is distant to something that is very close, you ask yourself the obvious question. Do I do enough? Not do they do enough. Do I do enough? Do I do enough as a company, as a CEO of a company? Do I do enough as a company? Do you guys do enough as bright, privileged young people? And the answer is a square no, by the way. So I want to leave you with a few thoughts and with a clear call to action. And a call to action, because I believe companies as force for good, with you as change agents, can make a massive difference. So let me first start with the three thoughts. Thought number one, and it's an obvious one, we have a duty to act. I mean, it's not about talk, it's about action. Thought number two, and it may be provocative to a number of you, is there is a real interest to act. I mean, there is a real business, economic interest to act. And we'll get back to that. Thought number three is companies can be and must be forced for good. And young employees, you ladies and gentlemen, need to be in those companies as a force for good and as an agent for change. We all in this room belong to the most privileged 2% of the population, be it by wealth or be it by education. It gives us a very clear responsibility to the remaining 98. Very clear responsibility. We cannot turn a blind eye on things that are becoming unbearable. I mean, inequalities are becoming unbearable. I mean, the simple concept that the 84 top people in the world own and earn as much as the bottom 3.5 billion doesn't make sense. I mean, the fact that we live on 2 planets, and soon 3 planets, whilst we have only one, is an equal nonsense. And there is a direct link between poverty and access to education, in the same way as there is a direct link between absence of education and violence or sustainability in all its form, be it food security, food safety, water access, etc. I mean, you name it. We all have a real vested interest to act. And that is good news in many ways. Because if doing good makes good business sense, if doing good makes good business sense, it makes it generally much more sustainable. And education makes enormous good business sense. I mean, education levels, and you can see that all over the literature, education levels are directly correlated to economic development. I mean, each year of average schooling equals plus 0.6% in GDP. Each point across a class of age, each score, I mean, each kid going 1 point up in score equates to about 2% of GDP growth, okay? $1 invested in education yields $10 in terms of growth. So it is an absolute no-brainer. There is a direct correlation between violence and education. What can companies do there? Well, not all companies have the luxury we have, which is to work for a fantastic purpose. But all companies have a fundamental part to play in that game for one very simple reason. We do employ many people, and as we do employ many people, we have access and we can train a large number of people. You equip people better. You do vocational training. So in Côte d'Ivoire, where they are missing electromechanical engineers, you train electromechanical engineers. But you don't do that only for the top 5% in your factory. You train everybody in the factory on a number of things. They take responsibility of their machines. They take responsibility of the safety of their peers. They take responsibility for their working environment. They learn to raise their voice and express themselves in a safe environment to raise their concern. So you increase their skill step by step. And as you're increasing their skills, as a company, you're also impacting their behaviors. I mean, gender equality is part of the behaviors you impact. You have also an impact on much larger numbers besides your shop floor workers, besides the trainees you take in the company, to your larger supply chain. You raise the level of expectations of your larger supply chain on behavior and education, and you move the entire field. Your values and your impact can travel. So over time, because of their reach, direct or indirect, companies have a fundamental impact on education, not only because they contribute to schools, but fundamentally because they train, and they train for skills, and they train for behavior. What role can you play, or what role do you play in that part? Well, besides running my company, I've been teaching for the last 15 years in a state PhD in France. And all my students at the end of the PhD have 2 choices. They can work for the state, and it's very comfortable, quite good jobs. Or they can comment from the sidelines, they can analyze, they can craft the laws, or they can come on the pitch and play the hard game. And my clear call to them, but also my clear call to you, and that's going to be my first call, is come on the pitch and play. You have a fundamental role to join companies that are force for good and be change agents in those companies, and to push companies that are not yet now force of good. Never, ever stop learning, interrogating, questioning. Learn from the real people as much as you learn from the book. Learn from the guys on the shop floor. Every time I'm going and visiting a country, I'm visiting a factory, I'm spending time with the guys on the shop floor. I'm learning more from them than I'm learning in the boardroom. Whatever you learn, find a way to leverage it and find a way to give it back. So find a way to transmit your knowledge and to leverage your knowledge. So learn. There is nothing more precious than education, but learn for a purpose, for impact, not for the sake of learning. Leverage what you have learned for impact, for good. This is what will make your education worthwhile, nothing else. And give back. I mean, share, teach, create vocation, nourish intellectual curiosity, push, push, push.